Hello, and welcome back to Void Whispers. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy drifting into dark, chilling tales whispered from the void, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable. Dim the lights if you dare. Relax your mind. Let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1. Like every day, Tariq came to the pond between the mountains to collect wood from the trees. The pond sat in a lonely hollow surrounded by steep slopes and thick forest. In daylight, the place looked beautiful from a distance. The water shone like polished glass, and the mountains around it stood tall and quiet, their peaks often hidden behind drifting clouds. But when evening came, the pond changed. The trees leaned closer, the water turned dark. The wind moved through the branches in a way that sounded almost like whispering. Most people did not come there after sunset. Tariq did. He always arrived in the evening when the last orange light was slipping behind the mountains. He worked through the night and left before dawn. It was not the safest way to gather wood, but Tariq had his reasons. He did not like being seen. He did not like being questioned. And most of all, he did not like anyone knowing what he carried in his bag. The first thing he did was arrange a fire. He gathered dry branches and leaves, placed them in a small circle of stones, and struck 2 rocks together until sparks jumped onto the kindling. He blew gently, shielding the weak flame with his hands until it caught. Soon, the fire grew strong enough to push back the darkness. Its light danced over the tree trunks and flickered across the still surface of the pond. The fire was for warmth, but also for protection. Wild animals came down from the mountains at night. Jackals, snakes, and sometimes worse things moved in the dark, unseen but always heard. Tariq did not fear animals as much as he feared people, but he was not stupid. A good fire kept many dangers away. When the flames were steady, he sat beside his bag. He looked around carefully. The trees stood silent. The pond did not move. No footsteps sounded from the slopes. Only then did Tariq open the bag and pull out the axe wrapped in black cloth. He held it with both hands, almost reverently. The cloth was old and plain, but what it hid beneath was anything but plain. Tariq slowly unwrapped it and let the black cloth fall to the ground. The axe shone in the firelight. It was made of solid gold. Even after all this time, Tariq could not look at it without feeling his breath catch. The handle gleamed. The blade glowed with a rich yellow brightness, so clean and beautiful that it seemed to hold its own light. It did not look like something made for cutting wood. It looked like something stolen from a king's treasure room, or from a temple, or from the hands of a god. Tariq lifted it and kissed the cold metal. "I'm glad you came to me," he whispered. He wasn't worthy of you anyway. Then he stood and began chopping trees. The golden axe should have been too soft to cut properly, but it never dulled. It sliced through bark and wood better than any iron blade Tariq had ever owned. Each strike landed cleanly. Each tree surrendered beneath it. The sound echoed through the hollow. Thwack, thwack, thwack. By midnight, Tariq's arms were heavy with exhaustion. Sweat soaked his shirt and ran down the sides of his face. His hands hurt from gripping the handle. His shoulders burned. Still, he had a good pile of logs beside him, and that made him feel better. He sat down by the fire for a short rest. The flames had dropped low, so he tossed in a few more sticks. Sparks rose into the night and vanished. Tariq leaned back against a tree trunk and plucked some apples from the branches above him. They were small and sour, but he ate them greedily. His throat was dry. He looked toward the pond. The water was dark and still. "I'm thirsty," he thought, "but I cannot drink from that pond." He had not drunk from it once since the day his life changed. He did not know what lived beneath that water, but he knew enough to fear it. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out a leather water pouch. He drank deeply, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and looked at the remaining wood. There are still logs left to split, he muttered. He wanted to stop. His body begged him to stop. But greed had become stronger than fatigue. Wood meant money. Money meant food. And the golden axe meant power. So Tariq stood again, picked up the axe, and went back to work. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The rhythm carried him through the night. He chopped until his hands grew slick with sweat. He chopped until his breathing came in harsh bursts. He chopped until his thoughts blurred into the sound of blades striking wood. Then it happened. The handle slipped. For one terrible second, Tariq felt the axe leave his hands. It spun once in the firelight, flashing gold, and dropped into the pond. There was a small splash. Tariq's heart nearly stopped. No, he forgot his tiredness. He forgot the cold. He forgot everything except the golden light disappearing beneath the black water. He ran to the edge of the pond and dove in without thinking. The water was freezing. It closed over his head like a hand. Tariq kicked downward, arms sweeping blindly through the dark. Mud brushed his fingers. Something soft moved near his ankle, and he jerked away in panic. He opened his eyes, but there was nothing to see. The fire above became only a faint orange blur. No, he thought, I can't lose it. I can't lose it. He searched until his lungs burned, then kicked upward and burst through the surface, gasping. The night was too dark. The pond was too deep. He would not find it like this. Tariq dragged himself back onto the bank and collapsed near the fire, soaked and shaking. Water dripped from his clothes onto the dirt. He stared at the pond with wide eyes, unable to accept what had happened. I should have brought another axe, he whispered, but he had not. Ever since he had received the golden one, he had refused to let it out of his sight. He carried it everywhere. He slept with it hidden beneath his bed. He trusted no one near it. It was his treasure, his weapon, his proof that life had finally given him something better than shame. As he sat there shivering by the fire, his mind returned to the day he got it. 1 year earlier, Tariq had been working by the same pond with the other woodcutters. Back then, he had owned an ordinary axe. It was old, iron, and slightly rusted, but it was the only tool he had. He hated the men he worked with, not all of them equally, but enough. They laughed too loudly. They took what they wanted. They treated kindness like weakness. And none of them was worse than Rashid. Rashid was bigger, stronger, and crueler than most. He bullied Tariq every chance he got. He made him carry extra loads, finish leftover work, and run little errands while the others watched. Sometimes he slapped him for no reason. Sometimes he kicked his legs out from under him just to hear the others laugh. The worst part was that some of the others felt sorry for Tariq. They told him so in private. You should stand up to him, they whispered when Rashid was not around. You can't let him treat you like that forever. We're with you. But whenever Rashid actually hit him, nobody stood with Tariq. They looked away. They pretended not to see. They became very busy with their own work. So Tariq swallowed his rage. He swallowed it day after day until it became something hard inside him. If only I had a family to back me up, he often thought. If only God had given me strength like theirs, I would teach them all a lesson. Then one day everyone finished work and went home, leaving only Rashid and Tariq behind. The sun was still high then, but it had begun to soften toward evening. The pond looked bright and harmless. Birds called from the trees. The air smelled of sap and fresh-cut wood. Rashid stretched lazily and leaned on his axe. Hey, he said, I'm going to go pee. Finish my work, too. Better yet, get it done before I get back. It was nearly as large as his own. But I still have my own work left, Tariq said. Rashid smiled as if they were friends. Oh, come on, brother. Just do it. I have to leave early today, otherwise my wife will scream at me. Something in him had reached its limit. No, he said. I won't do it. Rashid's smile disappeared. You won't? He stepped forward and snatched Tariq's axe from the ground. Tariq's whole body tensed. Give it back. I said, give it back. Tariq reached for it. Rashid shoved him hard. Tariq fell to the dirt. For a moment, he sat there stunned, one hand pressed against the ground, dust on his clothes. He could hear Rashid laughing above him. Something inside Tariq cracked open. He stood. Rashid did not expect the punch. Tariq's fist struck him squarely in the face. Rashid stumbled back, one hand flying to his nose. "I've been telling you," Tariq shouted. "Give it back." Rashid lowered his hand. There was blood under his nose. His eyes changed. "You hit me?" he snarled. Tariq stepped back. Rashid turned toward the pond and hurled Tariq's axe as hard as he could. The axe spun through the air and vanished into the water with a splash. "Go on then," Rashid said. "Go get your axe." Then he walked into the bushes. Tariq stood frozen. His anger collapsed into horror. That axe was his livelihood. Without it, he could not eat. He ran to the edge of the pond and stared into the water, but the axe was gone. He dropped to his knees and began to sob. From inside the brush, Rashid called out, "If you finish my work before I get back, I'll help you find your axe." Tariq wiped his face with his sleeve. Was Rashid telling the truth? Probably not. But despair makes people accept even rotten hope. Maybe I should not have hit him, Tariq thought. Maybe he did not say anything that wrong. He only asked for help. I got angry for no reason. The thoughts were familiar. He had used them many times to survive humiliation. He stood, picked up Rashid's axe, and began cutting Rashid's wood. By the time he finished, the sun was almost gone. The sky had turned orange, then purple. Shadows stretched between the trees. Tariq's arms shook with exhaustion. His own work was still unfinished, but Rashid's pile was done. Rashid had not returned. Panic rose in Tariq's chest. He went home. Tariq thought. He lied again. He made me do his work and left me without my axe. Tears filled his eyes. Then he heard Rashid's voice. "Keep the old one," Rashid called. "I've got an upgrade." Tariq turned toward the bushes. "What?" Rashid stepped out, grinning. In his hands was a golden axe. Tariq stopped breathing. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The blade shone even in the fading light. The handle gleamed like sunlight trapped in metal. "This," Tariq stammered, "this is with you?" Rashid held it up proudly. "Yeah, you should thank me, actually." "What are you talking about?" Rashid laughed. "While I was napping, some lady appeared by the pond. She asked if the axe that fell in was mine. First, she brought out a golden one, and I told her the truth. I said no. Then she gave it to me anyway because I was honest." Tariq stared at him. The story sounded impossible. It had to be a lie. Rashid must have found it somewhere, or stolen it, or made up the whole story just to torture him. But what if it was true? That thought made Tariq's blood boil. His axe had fallen into the pond. He was the one who had suffered. He was the one who deserved a reward. And this golden prize had gone to Rashid. To that bastard? Tariq clenched his teeth so hard his jaw hurt. "This should be mine," he whispered. Rashid frowned. "What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that?" Tariq did not answer. "I gave you an axe, didn't I?" Rashid said, pointing to his old tool on the ground. "Aren't you happy with that?" Tariq's hands began to shake. "Whatever," Rashid said. "Thanks for doing my work. I'm going home." He picked up his bundle of wood and turned his back. "Stop," Tariq said. Rashid kept walking. "That's mine," Tariq said louder. "She made a mistake. She had to have made a mistake." It was loud, mocking, and cruel. "Face it, Tariq. You're nobody. Even the gold knows it." Then he turned away again. The blade of Rashid's own axe buried itself in the back of his head. For a second, Tariq did not understand what had happened. Rashid's body stiffened. Then he fell forward onto the ground, the bundle of wood spilling beside him. Tariq stood there with both hands gripping the axe handle. His breath came in short, sharp sounds. "What have I done?" he whispered. His hands released the weapon and he stumbled back. "God, I've made a terrible mistake." Fear came next. Not regret. Not yet. Fear. If the villagers found out, they would kill him, or hang him, or beat him until he begged for death. Rashid had friends. Rashid had a wife. Rashid had a place in the village that Tariq had never been allowed to have. Driven by panic, Tariq dragged Rashid's body to the pond. It was harder than he expected. Rashid was heavy and the ground caught at his clothes. Tariq slipped twice. By the time he reached the water, he was sobbing, sweating, and covered in dirt. He took the golden axe, then he pushed Rashid's body into the pond. The water accepted him quietly. Tariq watched until the last ripple faded. Then he hid the golden axe under his clothes and hurried home. Now, 1 year later, Tariq sat by the fire beside the same pond, staring at the water where his treasure had vanished again. He had been lost in the memory for so long that dawn was beginning to break over the mountains. Pale light touched the tops of the trees. Birds began to call. Panic returned. I must find it quickly, he thought. If anyone sees me here without it, if anyone finds it, they will suspect something. He stood, ready to dive back into the pond. Then the water moved. Tariq froze. A girl's head rose slowly from the surface. She emerged without splashing, as if the pond itself were lifting her. She was beautiful, with long wet hair and a calm face. Her clothes were simple and plain, clinging to her body as the water ran from them. Half of her remained beneath the surface. For one breath, Tariq thought she was the same spirit Rashid had spoken of. Then he saw her hands. In one hand, she held the golden axe. In the other, she was dragging Rashid's rotting corpse. Tariq screamed and fell backward onto the dirt. The fire crackled beside him. The girl stood waist-deep in the water, completely calm. Rashid's body floated beside her, swollen, decayed, and covered in weeds. The empty sockets of his face seemed to stare at Tariq through the dawn mist. The girl spoke. Her voice was soft, but it carried across the pond with chilling clarity. "If you are truthful, you shall have what belongs to you." Tariq gasped for air. His heart hammered against his ribs. He wanted to run, but his legs would not move. The girl lifted the golden axe slightly. Then she lifted Rashid's corpse. "Tell me," she said, "which of these two belongs to you?" Tariq trembled. He looked at Rashid, then at the golden axe. The answer was clear. The corpse belonged to him. The guilt belonged to him. The pond had kept his secret for 1 year, but it had not forgotten. Still, even in that moment, with death staring at him from the water, greed spoke louder than truth. He raised one shaking finger and pointed to the golden axe. The girl tilted her head. "Is this it?" "Yes," he whispered. The girl's face changed, not into rage. Something worse. Disappointment. "Wrong," she said. The next movement was too fast for him to follow. The golden axe flashed in the morning light. Tariq felt a single burst of pain, bright and final, as the blade struck deep into his skull. He collapsed beside the fire. The girl looked down at him for a moment, then turned without another word. She descended back into the pond, taking the golden axe and Rashid's corpse with her. The water closed over them. The surface became still again. By the time the sun fully rose over the mountains, the pond looked peaceful. The fire had burned low, the trees stood quiet, and no one who passed that place later would have known that anything had happened there at all. Story 2. I am so sick and tired of Ozempic. I know how that sounds. I know people are going to read that and think I am just bitter or jealous, or one of those people who thinks everyone should suffer because they had to suffer once. Maybe there is some truth to that. I am not pretending to be noble here. I remember when losing weight meant something. You had to be dedicated. You had to be hungry in every sense of the word. Hungry for change, hungry for discipline, and usually just plain hungry because your stomach was eating itself while you pretended a salad with grilled chicken was a satisfying dinner. There was an edge to it, a suffering. A little bit of pride that came from denying yourself what your body screamed for. Now all someone has to do is walk into a pharmacy, get a prescription, and suddenly hunger is a thing that happens to other people. I am not saying it does not help people. I am not even saying it is wrong. I am saying it changed the game. And it destroyed people like Frankie. Frankie was an old friend of mine. We had known each other since high school. Back then, he was skinny in the way kids are when they have not grown into themselves yet. Thin wrists, narrow shoulders, always trying to make himself look bigger by standing with his arms slightly away from his sides. People picked on him for it, not constantly, but enough. By junior year, he had started changing. Fast. Too fast. His arms grew, his chest widened, his neck thickened. By senior year, Frankie looked less like a teenager and more like someone who should have been charging admission to watch him lift cars. The same guys who used to laugh at him started avoiding eye contact. He became addicted to being the guy people feared. Steroids helped him get there. Diet plans helped him sell it. That was his whole business as an adult. He sold meal plans, workout programs, supplement schedules, motivation calls, the whole thing. A little snake oil, sure, but not entirely fake. He knew how to make people feel like transformation was possible if they paid him enough. And because he looked like proof, people bought in. When a man built like a superhero walks up and tells you chicken rice, and his secret program can make you look like him, it is hard not to listen. Then came the miracle drugs, the hunger killers, the easy fix. People stopped wanting Frankie's suffering-based gospel. Why would they pay for a diet plan when a shot could make food stop calling their name? Why buy discipline from some guy online when medicine could do the hard part for them? Frankie started slipping. I knew it from the way he texted. Shorter messages, more desperation. More late-night rants about how the whole world was lazy now. How nobody respected hard work. How modern medicine was killing real fitness. So when he texted me begging for help, I was not surprised. I drove to his place that afternoon. Calling it a house would be generous. It was more like a trailer that had given up trying to stand straight. Bent tin panels, rust stains under the windows, weeds crawling up the sides. No car in the driveway. That part was new. I sat there for a minute, engine running, staring at the empty spot where his black pickup used to be. I figured maybe he was not home yet, so I called him. "Hey," I said when he picked up. "What's up, my man? I thought I was supposed to come over today. How come you're not home?" He answered by throwing open the front door. Frankie stepped onto the porch, and for a second I did not recognize him. He looked awful. The Frankie I remembered had been huge. Thick arms, barrel chest, always filling doorways like he wanted the whole world to move around him. The man standing on that porch looked barely 160 pounds, maybe less. He wore a stained white tank top that hung loose on him. His hair was greasy and wild. His skin looked pale and damp like he had been sweating for days. His cheeks had hollowed out. He hobbled toward my car, shaking the whole way when he opened the passenger door and dropped into the seat. I caught the smell of sour sweat and old cigarettes. Before I could even say hello, he started rambling. "Had to sell the car," he said. "These diet pills, man, they're ruining me. Look at that shack. Look at it. I started this whole thing to make real money, and this is what I got, a shack and no car." I glanced at the trailer. I hated to think it, but what did he expect from selling diet plans forever? "Well," I said, "hello to you too, Frankie." He turned on me. "Oh, I'm sorry. Did my lack of enthusiasm offend you? I don't have a car, dude." He was angry, but there was fear underneath it. That made it less funny. "All right, I apologize. I'm here, okay? I want to help. Tell me what you need." Frankie leaned back against the headrest and closed his eyes. "Just drive." "Where?" "Just drive. I'll tell you where to go." So I drove. He gave directions in short bursts, barely looking at me. Left here, straight, keep going, right after the liquor store. We ended up in a part of town I usually avoided, the kind of place where even the daylight looked tired. Broken sidewalks, boarded windows, graffiti on brick walls, empty lots full of weeds and trash. Frankie told me to park outside a narrow brick building with only 2 visible windows on the 2nd floor. The place looked abandoned. "Frank," I said, "I don't know if..." "Be right back." He got out before I could finish. The car door slammed and he hurried into the building. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, wondering what the hell I had gotten myself into. That was when it hit me. No wonder Frankie had lost so much weight. He could not afford steroids anymore. That was the simplest explanation. His business was dying. His car was gone. His body had shrunk. The thing that made him marketable had been built on chemicals, and now he could not keep up the supply. While I sat there thinking about it, I noticed movement in one of the 2nd-story windows. Frankie. He stood in the dim room above me, talking to someone I could not see. No, not talking. Arguing. Maybe pleading. His hands moved fast. His face was tight with desperation. Then he pointed down at my car. At me. My stomach turned cold. Frankie's finger jabbed toward the window again and again, like he was trying to convince whoever stood beside him. Then he looked down and locked eyes with me. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then he shook his head and turned back to the other person. I am not a lip reader, but some words are easy to recognize. When Frankie finally seemed to say, "Thank you," and his whole body relaxed with relief, I felt something inside me tighten. He disappeared from the window. 15 minutes later, he came back outside. He looked calmer now, too calm. He climbed into the passenger seat and gave me a quick smile, like nothing strange had happened. "Sorry about that," he said. "Had to drop in and have a little chat with my boss." "Boss?" I asked. "Since when do you have a boss? Your whole thing since high school has been that I'm going to be my own boss's speech." Frankie's smile faded. He looked hurt for half a second, but he covered it fast. "Well," he said, "if you want to make God laugh, right?" "Okay," I said slowly. "Let's go get food. You look like you need it. We can talk business over a Big Mac or something." I put the car in drive. Frankie grabbed the steering wheel. His hand was cold. "We can do that after," he said. "I need you to come inside with me." I stared at him. "Why?" "The boss wants to meet you." "Me? Why the hell would he want to meet me?" Frankie rubbed his face. "Remember how I said I needed your help?" "Yeah. We've been working on something. A new diet drug. I figured if you can't beat them, you know." My mind started digging for excuses immediately. "I don't know, Frank. I am not really comfortable selling some backdoor pharmacy drug." "Selling? You think he needs more dealers? Especially some random guy I dragged in?" "No. I told him I'd bring in trial users." I went still. "Trial users? Yeah. You brought me here to test some random drug. The idea was so ridiculous I almost laughed. Frankie did not. "Think about it like this," he said. $100,000, 50 for me, 50 for you. All you have to do is use the drug for 30 days. I wish I could say I immediately refused. I did not. $50,000 was a lot of money, more than I had ever held at one time. Enough to clear debt, enough to breathe, enough to make a very stupid idea sound almost reasonable. "And this is a diet pill?" I asked. "Like Ozempic?" "Not exactly," Frankie said. Ozempic suppresses all hunger. This thing suppresses certain hungers. Sweets, carbs, junk food, stuff like that. It changes what you crave. That sounded revolutionary. Dangerous, maybe, but revolutionary. Frankie kept talking. He told me it was controlled. He told me there were doctors. He told me the building looked bad from the outside because they needed privacy. He told me I would be monitored, paid, and out in a month with no problem. By the end, greed had done most of the convincing for him. $50,000. That number echoed louder than common sense. Fine, I said. But if this feels sketchy, I'm leaving. Frankie clapped once, smiling for the first time that day. Terrific. Come on. No need to waste time at all. Outside, it looked abandoned. Inside, it was spotless. White walls, polished floors, cold air. Bright lights, the smell of disinfectant burned my eyes and nose. It looked less like a drug den and more like a private clinic. That should have made me feel better. It did not. We walked through an empty waiting room lined with rows of chairs. No receptionist, no patients, no magazines. Just silence and the hum of fluorescent lights. At the back corner was a stairwell. This way, Frankie said. He moved quickly up the stairs, almost too quickly for someone who had looked half dead an hour earlier. On the second floor, we entered a long hallway with office doors lining both sides. Every door was shut, except for one at the far end. Above each door was a word. Mediterranean, vegan, carnivorous. I slowed down. What is this? Frankie did not answer. Right down here, he said. His shoulders were tense now. He was walking fast, almost jogging. Frankie, I said. He kept going. The open door waited at the end of the hall. The moment I stepped inside, two huge men grabbed me. I barely had time to shout before they slammed me onto an operating table. Straps snapped over my wrists, ankles, chest, and forehead. I fought as hard as I could, but they were too strong. "Frank," I screamed. "What the hell is this?" He stood by the door, not looking at me. One guard forced a leather strap into my mouth and pulled it tight behind my head. The taste was chemical, bitter, polished. My tongue pressed uselessly against it as I tried to speak. A man's voice came from my left. Is this him? A doctor stepped into view, or at least he dressed like one. Lab coat, rubber gloves, calm eyes behind thin glasses. Frankie nodded. "Just like I promised," he said. "Now about the payment." The doctor smiled. "Ah, yes. Your payment," he snapped his fingers. There were 3 sounds. The deafening crack of a pistol. Frankie's body hitting the floor. I stopped struggling. For a moment, I could not even breathe through my nose. Frankie lay on the tile with a dark hole in his forehead, and his eyes open in surprise. Whatever last thought, he had never made it to his mouth. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rage. I wanted to beg, but the terror in me became something blank and useless. The doctor came closer and touched my cheek. I realized I was crying when his gloved thumb wiped away a tear. There, he said. "No need for that. I assure you, everything will be over soon." He lifted a syringe and flicked it with one finger. A clear liquid trembled inside. "Please remember," he said, "you are doing this for science." The needle entered my vein. Cold spread through my arm. The room tilted. The doctor's face stretched. The lights became long white lines. Then everything went dark. I woke on a metal floor. The air was freezing. For a while, I did not move. I just lay there, shivering, trying to understand where I was. The floor under my cheek was wet. My mouth tasted like blood and chemicals. My head throbbed. Then the smell hit me. Rotten meat, blood, fat, decay. I pushed myself up slowly. I was in a large refrigerated room with steel walls and a drain in the center of the floor. Meat hooks hung from rails overhead, and from those hooks hung cow carcasses, dozens of them. 4 rows of 7, maybe more. Entire bodies, skinned and gutted, swaying gently in the cold air. Blood dripped from them in slow, thick drops. Some had gone dark around the edges. Some oozed yellowish fluid from places meat should not ooze. I should have vomited. Any normal person would have. Instead, my stomach growled loudly. The sound echoed off the steel walls. The smell was not disgusting to me. It was beautiful, warm, comforting. It reminded me of my mother's cooking, of backyard barbecues, of steaks sizzling in butter, of childhood dinners. of hunger finally seen home. I crawled toward the nearest carcass before I even understood what I was doing. At first, I told myself I was only curious. Then my hands gripped the cold meat. Then my teeth sank in. I lost myself after that. The taste was impossible to describe. Blood, fat, rot, salt, sweetness, iron, everything collided on my tongue and became pleasure so intense it made me dizzy. I tore at the flesh with my teeth. I ripped strips away and swallowed them half chewed. My hands slid over bone and muscle. Warmth spread through me despite the cold room. Some part of me knew it was wrong. Some human part buried deep inside screamed that I should stop, but it was small, quiet, easy to ignore. I ate until the carcass was nothing but torn bones and scraps. I gnawed anything I could break free. Skin, tendon, fat. I cracked smaller bones with my teeth and sucked what was inside. When I finally stopped, I was on the floor, covered in blood, too full to move. I had never felt more satisfied in my life. I closed my eyes. I slept. When I woke, my stomach was growling again. So I ate again. That became my life. Wake, hunger, eat, sleep, repeat. After the second day, I noticed the cameras, one in each corner of the room, small black domes fixed high on the walls, all pointed at me. They were recording everything. I knew I was being studied. I should have cared. I did not. The hunger left no room for dignity. Each day, I ate one cow, sometimes more. The carcasses dwindled. What started as almost 30 became 20, then 15, then 10. I began to panic when I realized the room was not being restocked. When only 5 were left, I started praying. I do not know who I prayed to. God, maybe? The doctor? The guards? Whoever watched through those cameras? Please give me more. Please, please. I will do anything. The last 5 days were torture. Each carcass disappeared too quickly. No matter how slowly I tried to eat, my body took over. The hunger demanded everything. Then the room was empty. A mountain of bones piled in the corner where I had dragged them. Cow skulls, ribs, femurs, vertebrae, splintered pieces. The floor was black with dried blood. For what felt like weeks, they left me there. No food, no doctor, only cameras. My stomach cramped so badly I could barely stand. My tongue felt swollen. My skin hung looser on my arms. My mind became a cage full of screaming animals. Then the voices started. Not from outside, inside. Eat, eat, eat. I tried licking old blood from the floor. I tried chewing scraps from the bones. It was not enough. Finally, I did what hunger told me to do. I stood in the center of the room where every camera could see me. I lifted my arm, placed it between my teeth, and bit down as hard as I could. Pain exploded through me. Blood spurted against my face. I screamed through my clenched teeth, but did not stop. I tore into my own flesh, gnawing until I saw white bone beneath red muscle. That was when the intercom crackled. A voice filled the room. Stop what you are doing immediately. I froze. Get down on your stomach with your hands behind your back and remain still. Armed guards will arrive at your door momentarily to provide your final meal. I repeat, do not move from your position. Final meal. The words should have scared me. Instead, saliva filled my mouth. I dropped onto my stomach, ignoring the fire in my arm. I folded my hands behind my back and waited. I counted backward from 60. At 20, an alarm buzzed. The door opened. Boots entered. Something heavy was dragged across the floor and dropped in front of me. Then the door slammed shut. For a few seconds, I did not look up. I did not want them to see my face. I did not want them to see what I had become. When silence returned, I lifted my head. Frankie lay in front of me, dead, pale, decomposing. They had cleaned the gunshot wound in his forehead like they had prepared him carefully. His mouth hung slightly open. His body had stiffened in places. His skin had begun to darken along the edges. I stared at him and thought of high school, the skinny kid who got tired of being laughed at, the huge man he turned himself into, the friend I had known for years, the traitor who had sold me, the corpse on the floor. Tears filled my eyes. Anger came next. I wanted to kill the doctor. I wanted to rip out his throat. I wanted to burn the whole building down and make every person inside feel what I had felt. Then hunger rose over everything. It washed the grief away. It swallowed the anger. It left only need. "I'm sorry, Frank," I whispered. My voice sounded cracked and animal. I lifted his limp arm toward my mouth. "Please know I'm sorry." I told myself I would only eat his arms and legs. That felt like mercy somehow. A way to leave some part of him whole. A stupid, desperate rule made by the last human part of me. But the scientists did not open the door. They did not stop me. They left Frankie in the room until every part of him was gone, until his bones joined the pile. I do not remember finishing him. I remember waking beside what was left and feeling satisfied. Then the gas came through the vents. A sweet chemical smell filled the room. I tried to crawl away, but there was nowhere to go. The lights blurred. The bones in the corner seemed to move. Then I slept. I woke in an alley. It was nighttime. I was covered in sweat, grime, and old blood. My arm had been bandaged, though the wound still throbbed. My clothes were not the same ones I had worn. My wallet was gone. My phone was gone. Somehow, I found my way home. My roommates were there. They shouted when I came in, asked where I had been, said I had been missing for almost a month, said they had called police, hospitals, everyone. I ignored them. I walked past them and collapsed into bed. I expected to sleep for days. Instead, I woke in the middle of the night. My stomach hurt, empty, a deep, clawing emptiness that made my whole body shake. I went to the kitchen and opened the fridge. Milk, eggs, leftover pasta, vegetables. None of it looked like food. Then I looked down the hallway. One of my roommates was asleep on the couch, mouth open, one arm hanging over the side. The hunger stirred. My mouth filled with saliva. That was when I understood the real result of the drug. It had not suppressed my hunger. It had narrowed it, focused it, perfected it. The doctor had said I was doing this for science. Frankie had said it changed what you crave. They were both right. And now, unfortunately, I had a whole buffet set up right inside my own home. Story 3. I have cancer. That is what my doctor told me after I went in complaining about a simple headache. A headache. That was all it was supposed to be. I had been getting them for a while. Dull pressure behind my eyes that came and went. I thought maybe it was age, stress, bad sleep, or too much coffee. I thought he would give me pills, tell me to rest, and send me home. Instead, they moved me from one white sterile room to another. White walls, white sheets, white lights, white coats. Everything around me looked clean enough to erase a life. They scanned my head, then they scanned other parts of me. Then they spoke in low voices outside the room, as if I could not tell the news was bad by the way they avoided looking directly at me. Eventually, the doctor came in, sat down, and told me the truth in the careful voice doctors use when they know they are about to divide your life into before and after. Cancer. Not the kind that waits politely. Not the kind that gives you years to think about it. My life was over, or soon would be. It is strange where the mind goes when the clock starts running out. I am not a young man, but I still thought I had time. Time to make amends. Time to correct a few things. Time to confess properly before death came and asked me what I had done with the years I was given. I have been Catholic for the better part of 2 decades now. I go to Mass, I pray, I cross myself before meals. I say I believe in forgiveness, but there are things forgiveness should not touch too easily. There are sins so large that speaking them aloud feels like opening a grave. I could go to a priest. I know that. I could sit in the dark little booth and tell him what I have done. I could let him hear my voice break and wait for him to give me penance. But these sins are too great to give to one man behind a screen. They are too vile to confess to anyone close to me. I could not bear the way they would look at me if they knew the horrors I helped cover up. I could not bear the thought of their faces changing forever when they realized what kind of man had been sitting at their table, smiling politely, pretending to be ordinary. So I am writing this here. To strangers, maybe that is cowardice. Maybe it is the only courage I have left. I apologize for any grammar or spelling mistakes. I have never been good with computers, and my hands shake more now than they used to. When I think of my greatest sins, they all lead back to one man. I will call him Mr. Smith. That was not his real name, of course. Men like him rarely need to hide behind false names. But I will use one anyway. Maybe out of habit. Maybe because part of me is still afraid of him. Even now, when my body is killing me faster than he ever could. I was Mr. Smith's chauffeur. That is the clean version. The version a person could say at a dinner party. I drove him to meetings, restaurants, private clubs, airport terminals, and homes that were too large to belong to people with souls. I opened doors. I waited outside in rain and snow. I polished the car. I kept water bottles in the back seat and learned which roads to avoid when he wanted privacy. But I did more than drive. Mr. Smith had an appetite. That is what he called it sometimes, when he was in a good mood. Other times he called it a weakness, a curse, or a requirement. I do not know what word fits best. Addiction comes close, but addiction sounds too human. Addiction implies suffering. Mr. Smith suffered only when he was denied. Because of that appetite, he often ended up in compromising situations. My job was to retrieve him and arrange the cleanup. That sounds simple, clinical, like handling paperwork. It was not. Mr. Smith was a powerful man on Wall Street. No one could ever confirm his true net worth, but everyone knew he belonged to the kind of wealth that does not need to be counted in public. He wore his fortune openly. Watches and rings worth more than houses. Handmade Italian suits that fit him like skin. Shoes polished so perfectly they reflected ceiling lights. He drank sweet wines from countries I had never heard of, and looking back, may not have been wine at all. People respected him because they were afraid of what he owned. People loved him because they wanted to own a fraction of it. I feared him because I knew what he was when the suit came off. The night I am writing about happened in 2002. I was 28 years old. I received a text from Mr. Smith at exactly 2:03 in the morning. It contained an address and one instruction. Retrieve me 1 hour from now. The address was in the shipping and port district of Chicago, in an area where the city felt forgotten by everyone except criminals, rats, and birds. The old house sat between two large warehouse buildings like something that had been trapped there by mistake. It must have been built decades earlier, back when fishermen and dock workers lived closer to their work. The paint had once been white, but most of it had weathered and chipped away, revealing rotten oak underneath. The porch sagged, the windows were dark, the curtains were drawn shut. The only sign of life was a murder of crows. They landed and lifted from the roof and power lines in waves of black wings. Their cries echoed through the empty district, bouncing off concrete buildings and steel fences. It sounded like the place itself was warning me. The mob still drowned people around there. That practice became famous during the days of Al Capone and Jaime Weiss. But it never truly died. People like to talk about concrete shoes, but that was mostly Hollywood. The truth was less dramatic and more efficient. A weighted body in deep enough water. A knife in the dark, a man who owed money walking one way and never walking back. There were bodies in those docks if you knew where to look. Long forgotten souls the police never even knew to search for. The place always made me uneasy. Drowning was not the only way to disappear someone there either. If a debtor was not worth the trouble of hiding, the mob might simply break a window and throw in a Molotov, or plant a small explosive near the base of a house and watch from a distance. If no one was home, the message was clear. If someone was home, the fire explained the body. Either way, fear did the rest. I parked half a block away and waited until exactly 3:03. Then I stepped out into the street. The air smelled of river water, rust, diesel, and old fish. My shoes sounded too loud on the pavement. I walked toward the house, trying not to look at the crows. The porch stairs groaned under my weight, and for a second I thought the wood might collapse beneath me. It held. I reached the front door and grabbed the knob. Before working for Mr. Smith, I had worked in a slaughterhouse in Mississippi. That was how I knew the smell. You never forget it once you have lived inside it. Death has a way of entering your body through the nose and staying there. At the slaughterhouse, the animals would empty their bowels as they died. Blood, waste, steam, fear, and hot meat all mixed together in the air. On Wednesdays, when the wind blew the wrong way, the smell drifted into my hometown. It clung to clothes and skin. You could shower until the water ran cold and still catch it under your fingernails later. When I opened that door, the same smell struck me. Not similar. The same death smells like death, no matter the species. The front room had once been a living room. Moldy maroon furniture sat scattered around, swollen from damp and age. A broken television lay crumpled in the corner. Its glass spread across the stained carpet like ice. The wallpaper peeled from the walls in long strips. There was a red and brown mass on the floor. At first, my mind refused to name it. Then I saw the limbs. Then what remained of the face. It had been a man. His lower jaw had been torn from his skull. The tendons that held the bottom of his face together were ripped loose, leaving the skin to sag like a wet rag. His tongue hung from the gaping hole and rested against his throat. Blood had spread beneath him in a thick pool, soaking into the carpet. His shirt was torn open around his torso, barely covering the ruined meat beneath. I stood there for a long moment. My body wanted to turn and run. My job was not to run. I forced myself to breathe slowly. In through the nose, though the smell made me gag. Out through the mouth. I could not afford to show weakness in front of Mr. Smith. Not then, not ever. Weakness around him was like bleeding in water. Down the hall, I heard something wet, a soft squelching, then chewing. The sound brought me back to the hogs in Mississippi. When we fed them scraps, they made that same low, eager noise, flesh pulling from bone, teeth working through soft things, little grunts of satisfaction as hunger became pleasure. The sounds grew louder as I moved through the kitchen. Or maybe I only heard them more clearly because I was closer. I passed the table with one broken chair. Dishes sat in the sink, crusted with old food. A baby bottle lay on the floor near the wall. I remember that detail because it made me stop for half a second. A baby bottle in a house where a man lay destroyed in the front room. Then I stepped into the hallway. Blood streaked the walls in long red ribbons. Some marks were wide, as if made by hands. Others were thin and dragging, running down into the cracks where the walls met the floor. The hallway seemed narrower than it should have, as if the blood itself had taken up space. A man knelt on the floor. He held a woman in his arms. His upper body was soaked red. Blood covered his hands, face, shirt, and hair, marking him unmistakably as the creature responsible for the scene. The woman's stomach had been opened. Dark fluid soaked her pants, and her insides spilled out in long, wet ropes that stretched almost to my feet. For a moment, all I could do was stare. Then I realized the man was chewing on her face. His teeth scraped against the bone of her skull. The left side of her face was gone, reduced to torn skin and clean white bone. The right side was still human enough to make it worse. Her eye stared over her shoulder toward the room behind her. Terror had remained fixed in her expression, trapped in every wrinkle of skin that still held its shape. Mr. Smith stopped chewing. He opened his eyes. They flicked toward me, pale blue and sharp even through the haze of whatever he had taken. Saliva and blood dripped from his mouth. "Sir," I said. My voice shook. He blinked slowly. "Johnny," he said, slurring the name. I didn't think he'd be here so soon. He tried to stand. The woman's body crumpled beneath him as he shifted. Mr. Smith stumbled forward, clearly drunk on whatever feast he had made of that house. He placed one hand on the wall for support. Then he gagged. His back arched downward and a thick slurry of brown meat spilled from his mouth onto the floor. "Fucking junkies," he spat. I said nothing. "Such beautiful young bodies," he muttered, wiping his mouth with the back of one hand. "And they fill them with tar." He ran his bloody fingers through his black hair and sighed as though he were discussing a bad wine. Something in me broke loose then. Maybe it was the smell. Maybe it was the woman's eyes staring toward the back room. Maybe it was the baby bottle on the kitchen floor. I forgot my place for one foolish second. "Why'd you pick them then?" I asked. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Mr. Smith's head turned. "What?" I froze. My muscles locked so tightly it hurt. I knew I could try to run. The front door was behind me, the street beyond that. Maybe I could make it. Maybe he was too full, too intoxicated, too unsteady. But then what? Mr. Smith was rich enough to erase men. He was strong enough to tear them apart. And even in that state, I knew he could catch me before I reached the car. I was stupid. So stupid. I had spoken to him like he was a man. He looked me up and down with those blue eyes, surprise spreading across his blood-stained face. "Watch yourself, boy," he snarled. The hallway went quiet except for my breathing. Then, after a long pause, he smiled. "I heard them planning to mug me down on Main Street," he said. "So I followed them. Turns out there was some untainted meat here after all." He lifted one finger and pointed toward the open door at the end of the hall. I leaned slightly to look inside. Compared to the rest of the house, the room was almost clean. It was dark, but I saw no mold on the walls. No broken furniture. No blood. Someone had clearly tried to keep that room separate from the rot of the rest of the building. Small toys lay scattered across the floor. A rocking horse, papers covered with bright crayon drawings. A dollhouse in the corner, nearly perfect. And beside it, a small bed. A little girl slept inside it. She tossed gently from side to side, trapped in whatever dreams children have. Maybe she was dreaming of monsters. Maybe she was dreaming of her parents. She had no idea a real monster had come into her home and taken them from her. My throat tightened. "Did they scream?" I asked. "No," Mr. Smith said. "Didn't want to wake the calf." The calf. That was what he called her. Not a girl, not a child, a calf. "Are you going to take her too?" I asked. He licked his lips. For one terrible moment, he looked into that room with interest. Then he exhaled slowly. "No, I'm full for the night." He swayed and reached toward me. "Come on, Johnny, old boy. I'd like to get home." He fell forward, and I caught him because that was my job. I put one of his arms over my shoulder and carried him down the hallway. His blood soaked into my jacket. His breath smelled of meat, wine, and rot. As we passed the child's room, I did not look inside again. I could not. I helped him over the corpse in the living room and out onto the porch. The night air hit my face, and for a second I felt relief so strong it almost made me weak. The smell was still in my nose, but the images were behind me. That is what I told myself. It was not true. The truth is that I still see that family every day. Every time I close my eyes, I see the woman without half her face and the man without his jaw. I see them standing together in my dreams while the little girl cries for people who will never come back. I lowered Mr. Smith into the back of the limousine. He moved like a drunk, loose and heavy, mumbling to himself. I shut the door and walked a few steps away before opening my flip phone. I dialed a number I knew by memory. When someone picked up, I did not wait for them to ask who it was. I gave the location. 2 dead, I said. 1 child alive. I need the whole house gone by tomorrow. My voice sounded calm. That is another thing I hate. I explained what needed to happen. Fire. A story. Something believable enough to keep the police from looking too closely. Something that would fit the neighborhood, the history, and the kind of people nobody in power cared much about. It was not only my job to drive that remorseless thing around. It was my job to make sure he never saw a day in jail. I got back into the car and sat behind the wheel. For a moment, I just breathed. Then I turned the ignition. The next evening, I waited outside Mr. Smith's estate. He had a press conference, and of course, I was to deliver him and pick him up. His estate sat behind gates and trimmed hedges, bright and clean and far away from the dockside house that had burned in the news that morning. When he came down to the car, he was perfectly dressed as usual. Fresh suit, clean hair, shining watch, no sign of blood, no sign of the feast, no sign of the woman's face or the child's room or the meat he had vomited in the hallway. He slid into the back of the limo. "You are a fucking artist," he said. He dropped a newspaper through the little open window between the back seat and the driver's section. The front page read, "2 killed in firebombing." I stared at it in the rearview mirror. Mr. Smith leaned forward, enjoying himself. 2 junkies failed to pay their dealer back for excessive amounts of dope they were buying, he said, using a dramatic voice. So, in righteous retribution, they burned down the house. But wait. Their darling little girl miraculously survives after being carried out by one of her burning parents. He laughed softly. Truly incredible stuff. He patted my shoulder. I turned on the ignition. "Thanks, sir," I said. "That little girl lived." I know that because I checked. Not directly. Never directly. But I followed the news. I read the small articles. I saw that she had been taken by relatives out of state. I saw a picture of her once wrapped in a blanket being carried by an emergency worker. Her eyes were open. She looked stunned, as if the world had become something too large and horrible for her mind to hold. I saved her life, some might say. But that is not true. I saved Mr. Smith first. The child survived because he was full, and because my cleanup crew needed one living witness to make the fire story believable. That is the kind of truth that waits for me now as I lie awake at night, feeling the cancer spread through me. That is the truth I will carry into whatever judgment comes next. This is only one story. There were many situations Mr. Smith found himself in. Many places I drove to in the dark. Many doors I opened. Many rooms I entered where I wished I had stayed outside. Many calls I made afterward to men who knew how to remove blood, rewrite events, scare witnesses, silence police, and make monsters look like philanthropists by morning. I may confess more of his sins, and mine. But writing even this much has taken more from me than I expected. My head hurts now. My hands will not stop shaking. I keep smelling that house, though I know I am sitting alone in my room with the window open and a candle burning near the little statue of the Virgin Mary on my shelf. I would like to believe confession matters. I would like to believe truth still has weight, even when it comes too late to save anyone, but I do not know. All I know is that death is coming, and when it does, I do not think I will be alone. I think the ghosts will come with it. The man without a jaw, the woman with one staring eye, the child crying in the room beyond the hall, and behind them, smiling in his clean suit, Mr. Smith asking me to open the car door one last time. Story 4. Times were rough and rent was not cheap. That is the cleanest way to explain why I answered the ad. I was in college, barely keeping myself upright on caffeine, stress, and a kind of stubbornness that probably looked like discipline from the outside. My schedule was miserable. I worked as a barista from 4 in the morning until 9:30, then went straight to my morning classes smelling like espresso and steamed milk. I only had 2 classes before lunch, but they somehow took up my entire morning and drained whatever energy I had left. My lunch break was an hour. Most people use that kind of time to eat, rest, or pretend to have a social life. I spent it back at the coffee shop picking up any extra minutes I could, because every penny mattered. After that, I went to 3 more classes, Then home to sleep for a few short hours before waking up at 3:30 the next morning and doing it all again. I was tired all the time. Not normal tired. Not the kind you fix with a nap or a weekend off. I mean tired deep in my bones. Tired in my eyes. Tired in the way I forgot simple words, missed turns while driving, and stood in the shower some mornings without remembering whether I had already washed my hair. So when I saw an ad offering $10,000 for one trip to a private facility and a simple test, I did not think as carefully as I should have. It was slow at the coffee shop that morning. The morning rush had passed, and the only people left were two old men arguing quietly near the window and a woman typing on a laptop like she was trying to break the keys. I stood behind the counter, flicking through my phone, checking wanted ads and side gigs like I always did. Most of them were garbage. Delivery work that did not fit my class schedule, warehouse shifts too far away, tutoring jobs that wanted experience. Then I saw it. Participants wanted. Private research facility. One visit. Basic assessment. Compensation, $10,000. I stared at the number. $10,000? That was rent? That was groceries. That was tuition pressure eased for a while. That was a small piece of breathing room in a life where I had forgotten what breathing room felt like. As soon as my shift ended, I skipped one of my afternoon classes and drove to the address on the ad. The GPS led me far out past the nicer parts of town, then past the warehouses, then down a road that seemed to exist only for truck drivers and people who did not want to be found. Eventually, I saw a tall chain-link fence topped with curling wire. Two guards stood at the gate, both armed, both wearing dark uniforms without any visible logo. That was the first moment I thought about leaving. Then I remembered the money. I pulled up to the guard booth and gave my name. One guard checked a clipboard while the other spoke into a walkie-talkie on his shoulder. He waited for a response, then nodded. The gate opened. I was told where to park and where to enter. The property was enormous and almost completely empty. Few cars, long stretches of asphalt, empty parking spaces spreading out in every direction, like the place had been built for thousands of people who had never arrived. It made me feel small, not lonely exactly, insignificant. Like if I disappeared there, the asphalt would not remember. I parked near a gray brick building and walked inside. The lobby was quiet, not waiting room quiet, dead quiet. There was a desk in the center of the room, and behind it sat a woman who looked like she had been designed by someone who hated wrinkles, mess, and warmth. Her hair was black, pulled back into a bun so tight it made the skin around her temples look stretched. Her suit was bright white, pristine, and almost painful to look at under the overhead lights. Her posture was perfect. Her face was sharp. Her smile was small and professional. I sat in the chair across from her desk. She did not greet me right away. Instead, she adjusted a strand of hair that had not moved, then smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her sleeve. I realized too late that I had sat down without shaking her hand or introducing myself properly. I stood quickly, embarrassed. She stood too. "I'm sorry," I started. "I should have..." She reached forward to shake my hand. Then she sneezed directly into my face. It happened too fast for me to turn away. Wet spray hit my cheeks, my nose, my lips, even one of my eyes. I recoiled slightly, then forced myself not to act disgusted because I needed this opportunity and did not want to ruin it within the first 30 seconds. "I am so sorry," she said. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. I wiped my face with my sleeve. The spit had a strange smell. Not just saliva, not sickness either. It smelled chemical and floral, like expensive perfume mixed with cleaning fluid. "It's fine," I said, even though it was not. We sat down. The interview lasted about an hour. At least I think it did. The questions were strange, not difficult, just odd. Did I experience sleep paralysis? Had I ever felt watched while alone? Did I dream in color? How often did I forget where I was? Had I ever died in a dream? If I heard someone calling my name from a room I knew was empty, would I answer? Did I believe pain could teach truth? I answered as honestly as I could at first. Then I started answering however I thought would get me the money. The woman wrote nothing down. She only watched me with that perfect smile, occasionally nodding as if my answers confirmed something she already knew. When we were finished, she folded her hands on the desk. "That will be all," she said. "Your check will arrive in the mail. That's it. That is it." I stood, confused but relieved. $10,000 for one weird interview seemed impossible, but I was not about to argue. I shook her hand again and headed toward the front entrance. Before I reached it, she called after me, "You'll need to use the back door." "What?" "The front entrance does not open from the inside." I laughed once, thinking she was joking. She was not. Her smile stayed in place. "The back exit will take you to the parking area." Something about that felt wrong, but I did not want to make a scene. I walked across the room toward a wooden door at the back. The woman watched me the whole way, still smiling. Behind the wooden door was a small room. Inside that room was an elevator. Only an elevator. No hallway. No exit. No parking lot. I looked back, but the wooden door had already closed behind me. I pressed the button with the up arrow. The elevator arrived almost immediately. I stepped inside, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling crawling up my spine. There were several buttons, all labeled strangely. One said Parking Area A. That sounded like the quickest way out, so I pressed it. The elevator rocked. Not like normal movement. It lurched. Then it stopped. The doors opened. I stepped out into a parking garage. Not the front lot. A parking garage. I had not seen any garage when I pulled into the facility. There had been nothing but open asphalt and that single gray building. Yet there I was, standing on the top level of a concrete spiral with low ceilings, fluorescent lights, and empty parking spaces stretching downward. I turned back toward the elevator. There was no elevator, only a wall. A no smoking poster peeled slowly away from the paint at one corner. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I took a deep breath, pulled my jacket tighter around myself, and started walking down the ramp. The garage was empty. No cars. No people, only my footsteps and the faint hum of lights overhead. I was about 2 floors down when I heard an engine. The sound came from below. A car revving. I stepped closer to the wall, assuming whoever was driving would pass me on the way down. But the car did not pass. The engine screamed. Headlights appeared around the bend. The car came straight at me. I had no time to move. The impact smashed me against the concrete barrier. There was pain, but only for a second. Then there was pressure, heat, and the terrible understanding that my body had been crushed almost in half. The front of the car was ruined. Steam hissed from the hood. A man in a nice suit stepped out of the driver's side, calm and unhurried. He walked over to me, crouched beside what was left of my body, and checked my pulse. I tried to speak. Blood came out instead. The world darkened. I thought those were the hands of death closing around me. I was wrong. I jolted awake in the interview office. I was sitting in the same padded chair across from the woman in white. Her black hair was still perfectly tucked back. Her smile had not changed. "Are you okay to continue?" she asked. I looked around wildly. The room was whole. My body was whole. My clothes were clean. There was no blood, no parking garage, no wrecked car. "What happened?" I whispered. "You dozed off during questioning," she said. "Only for a moment. Then you came back. That doesn't happen to me. Stress does strange things." I wanted to argue, but the memory already felt dreamlike, slippery and unreal. Maybe I had fallen asleep. Maybe I was more exhausted than I thought. Maybe my brain had produced one of the most vivid nightmares I had ever experienced. So I stayed. I answered more questions. Eventually, she told me again that my check would arrive in the mail. Again, I went to the back door. Again, there was the elevator. This time, I did not press Parking Area A. I chose a different button. The elevator rose, then opened onto another level of the same parking garage. I stepped out carefully. This level was empty too, except for a single man standing near the far wall. He began walking toward me. I walked faster. He walked faster too. He was large, too large, broad shoulders, thick neck, heavy arms hanging at his sides. His face was hidden in the shadow of the overhead lights. My heart started pounding. I broke into a jog. So did he. Then I sprinted. The garage spiraled downward and I ran along the concrete ramp, shoes slapping hard against the floor. Behind me, the man's footsteps thundered closer. I could hear his breathing, fast, eager. I looked back once and saw him gaining. I started crying while I ran. Not quietly, full panic tears, hot on my face, because I already knew what was coming and could not stop it. At the edge of the next turn, he caught me. 2 hands slammed into my back. I went over the concrete barrier. For a moment, I was falling. Then I hit the level below. Pain shattered through me. I was still alive when the men in suits arrived. They crouched around me. One took my pulse. Another checked my pupils. A third wrapped a blood pressure cuff around my arm. Then everything went black again. I woke in the interview room. This time I knew. The woman smiled. "Are you okay?" I stared at her. No. No, I was not okay. I gave her a crooked smile because I did not know what else my face was supposed to do. "I think I'm sick," I said. "I need help getting to my car. I'm afraid I'm the only staff member available at the moment." Of course she was. "My car is right outside," I said, "through the front parking lot. I just need to leave." Her smile remained perfect. "You will have to manage on your own." I stood and rushed to the front door. I grabbed the handle and pushed. Nothing. I pulled. Nothing. I slammed my shoulder into it. The woman's voice sharpened behind me. "Please, stop that." I kept trying. "Sir, if you continue damaging facility property, I will contact the police." "Call them," I snapped. "Please, call someone." She said nothing. The front door would not open. Eventually, exhausted and shaking, I had no choice but to try the elevator again. I went through the back door, pressed another button, waited. The doors opened onto a lobby, not a garage. A wide, empty lobby with polished floors and double glass doors straight ahead. Outside. I could see outside. Real daylight. The parking lot. My car. For a second, relief nearly knocked me down. I was halfway across the lobby when I heard the chainsaw. Then another. The buzzing roar filled the room. 2 clowns stepped out from the shadows. I do not mean people who looked like clowns in a normal way. These were huge, bloated figures in polka dot pants and tight overalls. Their arms were bare, painted white from wrist to shoulder. Their faces were caked in makeup, red smiles stretched far too wide, black eyes glittering inside painted circles. Each held a chainsaw. They giggled as they came for me. I ran, but the lobby suddenly felt too big, too open, the doors farther away than they had been seconds earlier. The first blade caught my side, just a nick. Then another opened my thigh. Then one bit deep into my shoulder. I screamed. The clowns danced around me as they cut. Their laughter rose over the rumble of the saws. Their hot, wet breath hit my face when they leaned close, their painted smiles cracking at the corners. I saw flashes of white makeup, red mouths, spinning chains, and my own blood spraying across the clean floor. They did not kill me quickly. That was the worst part. They took pieces. They made a performance of it. When I was finally on the floor, barely conscious, the men in suits arrived again. One stuck a thermometer in my mouth. Another checked my blood pressure while I bled out. Then the world went black. I woke screaming. The woman in white sat across from me. "Are you okay?" I screamed again, this time from anger. I tore through the office, looking for something I could use as a weapon. The woman stood and watched me, almost curious. I found a supply closet, grabbed an aluminum broom, and used a small utility knife from the desk to cut off the brush head. It left the metal end jagged and sharp. The woman did not stop me. That frightened me more than if she had. I went back to the elevator with the sharpened broomstick in both hands. I pressed another button. The elevator opened into a back office full of cubicles. Beyond the cubicles was a door. Through its small window, I saw the front parking lot. My car. Real air. Freedom. I almost laughed. Then a gunshot cracked through the office. The bullet hit a cubicle wall inches from my head. I dropped to the floor and crawled. Another shot. I kept moving toward the exit, dragging the broomstick with me, too scared to look up. Then a pair of furry feet stepped into my path. I looked up slowly. It was a mascot, a beaver mascot, a large, round body, a big, flat tail, a fixed cartoon grin, some kind of baseball team logo on its shirt. It held a handgun in one fake paw. Somehow, one gloved finger fit through the trigger guard. The beaver mascot tilted its head, then it shot me 3 times. The men in suits rushed in as I died. This time, I fought them when they tried to test me. I swung weakly, kicked, cursed, spat blood. It did not matter. Darkness came again. When I woke in the interview room, I was done. Not angry, not brave. Done. I sat there staring at the woman while she asked if I was okay, and I finally thought back to the beginning, to the moment I entered. The awkward greeting, the sneeze, the wet spray on my face, the chemical perfume smell that had not been saliva. I had been drugged the moment I arrived. There was no interview, no real test, no $10,000 check. My body was probably still sitting in that chair, limp and drooling, while my mind was being dragged through death after death. Maybe the men in suits had been taking vitals in the real world each time. Maybe every death was a simulation. Or maybe they were doing something worse. "You can leave now," the woman said, just as she always did. "Your check will be in the mail." She stood and offered her hand. I stared at it. Then she added, "You should use the front door. The elevator only goes to the parking garage and a few offices. The same door that had refused to open." I walked to it and pushed. It opened easily. Cool outside air touched my face. Before leaving, I turned back to the woman. "You drugged me," I said. My voice shook. "You experimented on me without my permission." "I don't appreciate being handled off guard," I added, because my mind was so broken by then that it was the only ridiculous sentence I could manage. She sat back down at her desk and picked up a pen. "If you begin experiencing unusual side effects, consult a doctor." She looked up as if I had asked the most ordinary question in the world. A third eye forming on the brow. Dry mouth. The development of an additional heart, which may feel similar to a cardiac event. A rash around the arms or legs. Excess mucus expulsion from the body, sometimes lasting several hours. Anti-nausea medication may help with that. I stared at her. She continued, "If you begin experiencing reality in the 4th dimension, remain where you are. Do not leave your house under any circumstances." The way she said it made my blood turn cold, like she was warning me about rain. Not madness, not mutation, not dimensions. Rain. "Have a nice rest of your day," she said cheerfully. I walked out. On the way down the front steps, I nearly bumped into a man going in. He looked nervous, but excited. I stopped him. "Why are you here?" He smiled. "Some survey thing. A few hundred questions, I guess. Pays $10,000. I don't mind spending the time for that kind of money." I thought about grabbing his arm and dragging him back to the parking lot. I thought about telling him what had happened. But even as I opened my mouth, I could hear how insane it would sound. So I clapped him on the shoulder. "Good luck," I said. He laughed and went inside. I made it to my car. The gate opened when I drove toward it. No one stopped me. I got a mile down the road before I pulled over and cried so hard I almost threw up. Because I still did not know if I had escaped. That was the worst part. I did not know whether the front door opening was real or just another level. Another button. Another test. I drove home anyway. I locked my apartment door. Then I shoved my couch against it. Then I blocked the windows with furniture. I called out of work and used all my vacation days at once. I emailed my professors and told them I had a medical emergency. That was 3 days ago. I have not left since. I keep checking my body. No third eye. No extra heartbeat. At least I do not think so. But sometimes I hear an engine revving below my window. Sometimes I smell chainsaw fumes. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I see that woman's perfect smile, and twice now, I have woken up sitting in a chair I do not own, facing a desk that is not there when I turn on the lights. This morning, an envelope arrived under my door. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a check for $10,000. The memo line said, "Thank you for your participation." I tore it up. Then I heard a woman sneeze from somewhere behind me. I have not turned around yet. Story 5. My grip tightened around the bathroom sink as my tongue moved over the polished edge of my last molar. I could feel it loosening, not just moving, releasing. The roots were letting go from deep inside my gums, one slow thread of pressure at a time. I tilted my head back slightly, not because it helped, but because I wanted the feeling to last. It rose through my jaw in a warm, trembling wave, a relief so deep it almost felt holy. For a moment, the whole world narrowed down to that one tooth, that final piece of me still anchored in place. Then it came free. The molar rolled to the back of my mouth, heavy and wet against my tongue. I stood there with both hands gripping the sink, breathing through my nose, shaking from the pleasure of it. I tried to guide my tongue into the fresh hole it had left behind, desperate to taste whatever remained of that fading warmth, but all I found was blood. Coppers spread across my mouth, thick and bitter. The wound throbbed softly, and with every pulse, the last trace of that strange relief slipped farther away. I lowered my head and spat into the sink. The tooth fell with a small clink against the porcelain. It sat there for a second in a smear of red saliva, white and ugly in mine. Then the water from the faucet carried it slowly toward the drain. A sudden panic seized me. It was more than fear. It was need, a violent, desperate need to save it, to keep it from disappearing into the black little hole at the bottom of the basin. I could not let it be lost. I stood frozen, watching the molar drift closer to the drain on a blanket of blood and spit. Every muscle in my body tensed. Just before it vanished, my hand shot forward and snatched it from the sink. I stumbled backward and sank to the bathroom floor, clutching the tooth in my fist. I held it so tightly that my knuckles hurt. I was afraid someone would take it from me. Then I cried. It had started 31 days earlier. There was nothing remarkable about the first day I lost a tooth. No warning, no accident, no sudden pain that made me think something was wrong. My alarm woke me at the usual time, and my cheap store-brand coffee tasted as stale as ever. I made breakfast because that was what I did every morning, though I had no real appetite. I burned my toast a little, scraped the black part into the sink, and ate it while scrolling through my phone until the coffee went lukewarm. It was the kind of morning a person forgets before lunch. After breakfast, I went into the bathroom to brush my teeth. That was when I noticed it. One of my canines had shifted. The cheap LED light above the mirror made everything look too harsh, too blue, too honest. I leaned closer, lips pulled back, staring at the tooth. It was not extremely loose at first, only slightly wrong. It tilted forward more than it should have, as if it were trying to escape the line of the others. I touched it with my tongue. It moved. That was when the feeling began. A strange compulsion passed through me, so sudden and complete that I forgot about work, forgot about time, forgot about everything except the tooth. I did not think I should call a dentist. I did not think, this is bad. I thought only that I needed to claim it. The tooth was mine. I had to pull it free. I had to keep it safe. I stood in front of the mirror longer than I should have, staring at that crooked canine, feeling something warm and eager coil at the base of my jaw. Eventually, the panic of being late pulled me away. I rinsed my mouth, grabbed my things, and left. But the thought followed me all day. At work, whenever no one was looking, I pressed my tongue against the tooth. I tested it gently at first, then harder. It rocked in its place, sending a tiny pulse of sensation through my gum each time. I told myself I was only checking whether it had gotten worse. That was a lie. I knew it even then. I wanted it to move. I wanted it to come loose. By the time I got home, I could barely think about anything else. I dropped my keys on the counter and went straight to the bathroom. I leaned into the mirror and inspected my face as if something on the outside might explain what was happening inside my mouth. I pulled down my eyelids. I traced my jaw. I checked for swelling, bruising, infection, anything. There was nothing. When I opened my mouth, the canine had tilted even farther forward. I stared at it for a long time. Then I touched it with my finger. The sensation was soft at first. A tingle moved through my mouth, down my throat, through my chest, then into my hands and feet. I tapped it again. The feeling grew stronger. I rubbed the side of the tooth with my fingertips, slow and careful, and my knees nearly buckled from the warmth that spread through me. I closed my eyes, saliva filled my mouth and slid down my chin. I did not care. It dripped into the sink, then onto the bathroom floor. My breathing became shallow. My fingers pressed harder against the tooth, rolling it gently back and forth. The pleasure built, then, suddenly, it stopped. I opened my eyes. My fingers were wet with saliva. In my palm sat a small white tooth. For a second, I only felt disappointment. There had been no pain, no blood, no dramatic snapping of roots. It had simply come out, and the feeling had vanished with it. I looked at the tooth resting in my hand. Away from my mouth, it seemed less like part of me. Smaller, less important, almost dirty. Its roots were black, and a dry, earthy crust clung to the base. I touched the crust with my finger. Some of it rubbed away gritty and dark. When I rolled it between my fingertips, a faint trace of that warmth returned. I should have thrown it away. I should have wrapped it in tissue, called a dentist, and told someone what had happened. Instead, I placed it on the edge of the sink and stared at it. The tooth sat there, wet and white against the porcelain. After a while, I bent down until my mouth touched the sink. I do not know why. That is not true. I knew why. I wanted it back. I pressed my lips around the tooth and drew it into my mouth. The taste of porcelain, dried water, dust, and blood spread across my tongue. The tooth felt cold and smooth and warm as my saliva coated it. I rolled it around slowly, tracing the shape with my tongue. Then I swallowed. I did not mean to. Or maybe I did. That night, I had the first dream. The air around me was colder than it should have been. But there was no draft against my face. I opened my eyes in my bedroom, or something shaped like my bedroom. No light came through the slits in the blinds. No cars passed outside. No voices drifted up from the street. The silence was too complete. Usually, silence comforted me. That night, it felt wrong. The room felt foreign, as if the air had been left sitting there for years. My lips were dry. When I tried to lick them, my tongue found the empty socket where the canine had been. I let it rest there, pressing gently into the soft hollow, before sliding it across my other teeth. A faint, earthy taste coated my mouth like damp leaves pressed into soil after rain. I sucked at my teeth, expecting some of them to shift. They all felt firm. Then came a thud. I tried to sit up, but stopped before my feet touched the floor. The room was too dark, too deep. I called out, hoping my voice would scare away whatever had made the noise. Something moved to my right, then to my left. A soft, dry rattling passed back and forth through the room. Rattle. I tried to follow it with my eyes, but the sound would not stay in one place. It seemed to crawl over the walls, then under the bed, then behind my head. Rattle. My breathing grew fast and uneven. I was too scared to move. but staying still did not feel any safer. I stared past my feet toward the end of the bed where the darkness seemed thickest. Rattle. I wanted to cover my face, but my hands would not move. Make it stop, I whispered. Please make it stop. Rattle. Rattle. Rattle, warm breath touched my face. I turned toward it. Two glassy eyes stared back at me. Wet hair clung to a balding scalp. Long arms gripped both sides of my bed frame. Its skin looked stretched too thin over bones that were arranged almost correctly, but not quite. Something hung in front of my face, swaying gently. It rattled with a dull ivory sound. Teeth. A string of teeth. I opened my mouth and screamed. I woke up calm. That was the strange part. The nightmare should have terrified me. It did terrify me while I was inside it. But when I opened my eyes in the morning, soaked in sweat, I felt rested, relieved, almost clean. The empty socket in my mouth throbbed softly, and when I touched it with my tongue, warmth bloomed under my skin. After that, the dreams became common. Every few nights, I saw the thing again. Sometimes it stood in the corner. Sometimes it crawled across the ceiling. Sometimes it sat at the foot of my bed, rattling strings of teeth in its long fingers. It never spoke, but the dreams always left me with the same feeling when I woke. Relief. Peace. Need. I began checking my mouth every morning. I would stand in front of the bathroom mirror, pull my lips back, and count the empty spaces. Some teeth loosened on their own. Some fell into my mouth while I slept. Others vanished entirely, leaving only soft red gaps and the taste of soil behind. Some I pulled myself. With every lost tooth, the warmth returned. At first, I was afraid of what was happening. Then the fear softened. Then it changed into anticipation. I started to look forward to the next loose tooth the way other people might look forward to a message from someone they loved. Soon, the bumps appeared. Small circular bruises marked my arms and legs. Each one had a pale, hard spot at the center. They were cold to the touch. One morning, they were on my forearm. The next, more appeared along my thigh, then my ribs, then my back. I did not feel disgust. I felt curiosity. I pressed them gently and watched how the skin reacted. Around the edges, each bump sent warm ripples through my body when touched. The centers hurt, though. A sharp warning sting every time I pushed too hard. Not yet. That was the thought that came to me. Not yet. My room began to feel different, too. At first, I had hated how much time I spent in there. The closed door, the stale air, the same four walls, the dirty laundry, the unopened mail. It had felt like proof that I was getting worse. But after the teeth started falling out, the room no longer felt like a trap. It felt like a shell, a safe place, a place where something was being prepared. I kept the lost teeth in a glass jar beside my bed. At least, the ones I did not swallow. I liked seeing them gathered together. I would unscrew the lid and tilt the jar gently, listening to the teeth clatter against the glass. The sound comforted me. Sometimes I ran my fingers over their smooth surfaces, tracing their ridges, touching the black roots, rubbing away the dry, earthy crust that clung to them. After a while, touching them was not enough. I started placing them on my tongue. I would let one sit there until it warmed, then roll it around my mouth. Sometimes I chewed lightly, grinding it against the teeth I still had left. Sometimes I swallowed. Each time the warmth came back, I told myself I was returning them to where they belonged. Other times, I buried them. I filled little cups and bowls with soil from outside and pressed the teeth into the dirt. I watered them. I stared at the small heaps for hours, waiting for a sign that something had taken root. Nothing ever did, but I kept checking. Time blurred after that. I went to work less. Then not at all. I stopped answering calls. I stopped opening messages. Hunger became distant and unimportant. Sometimes I ate. Sometimes I did not. The teeth I swallowed felt like enough, even though I knew that could not be true. I stopped showering regularly. My clothes grew stiff. My bed sheets smelled sour. The bathroom sink was always stained pink or brown. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My eyes were bloodshot, my cheeks had hollowed, my lips were cracked, my gums were swollen and angry around the empty spaces in my mouth. Only one tooth remained, a final molar far in the back. I touched it constantly with my tongue. It was still firm. That bothered me more than anything. By the 31st day, I could not stand it anymore. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and forced my jaw open. The molar sat there in the dark red hollow of my mouth, stubborn and polished, the last piece refusing to release. My hands shook as I reached inside. I expected pain. I expected blood. I expected a fight. But I pulled slightly and it came loose. Just like that, the molar rolled into my palm. For 1 second, the sight of it felt impossible. The last tooth, the final piece. I waited for the warmth to follow. Nothing came. I waited longer. Still nothing. Disappointment hit first, then anger. The molar clenched in my fist. I struck the mirror. A crack split across my reflection. I hit it again. Harder. The glass broke, falling into the sink in glittering stained pieces. A distorted, toothless face stared back at me from a dozen broken fragments. I did not want it to be over. Not like this. Not empty. Not without a reward. Where was the feeling? Where was the warmth? Where was the thing I had been promised without ever hearing the words? I ran into the living room. The jar of teeth sat on the table beside my bed, its glass smudged with dried blood and saliva. For a moment, I could only stare at it. All those pieces of me gathered together. All those nights. All that waiting. Now the final molar sat in my hand. I wanted to drop it inside. I wanted to hear it join the others. But then what? Once the last tooth was in the jar, what would be left? No. I clutched the jar to my chest and returned to the bathroom. Broken mirror shards crunched under my feet. My gums throbbed. Blood and saliva slid down my chin. I unscrewed the lid. The smell of rot poured out. I did not give myself time to think. I flipped the jar over the sink and watched the teeth spill into the basin, clattering against porcelain like dice made of bone. In the shards of mirror, my reflection smiled back with a toothless grin. Then I saw the blood. It began as thin red lines running from my gums. Then more came. It filled my mouth faster than I could spit. I leaned over the sink, choking as blood poured between my lips and painted the porcelain. I tried to swallow. My mouth filled again. My nails dug into the sink. Make it stop, I tried to say. Without teeth, the words came out wet and wrong. Make it stop. I gagged, clawing at my neck. My knees weakened. I fell to the bathroom floor and pressed both hands over my mouth, as if I could hold myself together. I thought I would die there, alone, toothless, choking on myself. I'll do anything, I sobbed. The words were barely words. I'll do anything. It moved through me like fire under skin. My lungs opened, the blood slowed. The bleeding stopped. I lay in the mess on the tile, weak and shaking, staring up at the cracked ceiling. For a moment, I felt relief. Then the pain started. The bumps had risen. Every mark across my body had swollen, each one now hard and white at the center. They pressed against my skin from underneath, pale and round, as if dozens of tiny teeth were trying to push their way out. I understood immediately. I had to get them free. I squeezed one of the larger bumps on my forearm. Pain stabbed through me, but the skin held. Whatever was inside was not sharp enough to break through on its own. So I reached for a shard of broken mirror. My fingers closed around the glass. I pressed the edge to the blistered skin and cut. The pain nearly made me faint. Black spots crowded my vision. I lowered my forehead against the sink and breathed until the dizziness passed. Then I squeezed the wound as hard as I could. A thick black liquid oozed out and ran down my arm. I cut deeper. More bumps swelled across my body, my legs, chest, stomach, shoulders, back. There had to be hundreds. I could feel them waking beneath my skin, pushing, shifting, waiting. I wiped black paste from my arm and pressed the glass into the wound again. My vision blurred. My body shook. But I kept carving until something pale pressed through the opening. I stopped breathing. A little enamel thing worked its way free. It was shaped almost like a tooth, but too small and too alive. The surface was glossy white. Its roots had split into thin, twitching legs. It dropped onto the bathroom tile with a wet click, paused, then scurried away beneath the sink. I screamed. Another bump tore open near my knee. Then one on my ribs. Then 3 across my shoulder. They began cutting their own way out of me from the inside, little white enamel bugs forcing themselves through the skin on root-like legs. They clattered onto the tile, leaving trails of black fluid behind them. I collapsed onto the floor. They crawled over me, not biting, not attacking, leaving. Returning to wherever they belonged, through the blur of pain, I heard the rattling from my dreams. Dry, ivory, closer than ever. Something stood in the doorway of the bathroom. I could not lift my head enough to see all of it, but I saw the long pale legs, the wet hair hanging down, the bony hands holding strings of teeth that clicked softly together. A warm breath touched the side of my face. The thing leaned close. For the first time it spoke. Its voice sounded like enamel scraping over glass. Don't defile it. I tried to answer, but I had no teeth, no strength, no words. The creature's hand settled gently on my head, almost lovingly. The last thing I felt before the pain swallowed me was one of the enamel bugs crawling from the torn flesh of my cheek, dragging its thin roots across my lips. Then it dropped into the sink and joined the others as they gathered around the drain, rattling in worship before slipping one by one into the dark. Story 6. Writing this down makes something final that I do not take lightly. It means my real name can never be attached to my writing. It means Thomas Cullen, the pen name I have used for years, is not just something convenient anymore. It is permanent. It has to be. It means the part of me that loves writing, the part of me that wants to be known for it, will never be able to stand in the open and take credit with my real face and my real name. I am risking too much by sharing this, and I know there is no real reward waiting for me. No fame, no money, no praise. Nothing that could make this worth it in a normal way. The only reward I can hope for is peace. Maybe, after I write this, I will be able to go a few days without thinking about that awful week when I was 8. Maybe I will stop replaying the same sounds in my head. Maybe I will finally allow myself to forget, even a little. I need that. I am sorry I have been thinking about sharing this for a couple of years. Not because I am afraid of a bird. Not anymore. I am not even sure there ever was a bird. I stayed quiet because of the family involved. They were people I knew, people I was close to once. People who I am sure have spent years trying to bury their pain and keep the past where it belongs. I do not want to hurt them again, but I am 25 now, and I think I deserve some version of closure too. He was my friend too. I gave up on true closure a long time ago. Some things do not close. They sit open inside you forever, and you just learn how to walk around the wound. But I am hoping that writing this will help me process what really happened. It feels selfish. It feels dirty, honestly. Like I am taking someone else's tragedy and making it about myself, but I cannot keep the only true version of that week locked inside my head any longer. It affects everything I do. It follows me into my writing, into my sleep, into the way I hear birds outside my window. It makes me feel stained. I want to let it go. Most people who follow me know I am a writer. It is in my bio. I understand that some people will assume this is fiction, especially because everything else I post is fiction. I do not blame anyone for thinking that. Maybe it is easier if you do. But if you keep reading with that assumption, please do not leave cruel comments about the family involved. I mean that. You will be blocked. If I need to, I will disable comments altogether. This story includes the death of a child. Please do not continue if you are not prepared for that. And for anyone in my real life who somehow finds this, please do not turn this into a witch hunt. Please do not send it to the family. You know me. You know I am not doing this for attention. Just let me get it out. This did not begin with a bird. It did not even begin in my garage. It began with a friendship I had in elementary school with a boy I will call Adam. I say friendship, but it was complicated. I was closer to his older brother than I was to him. Adam was 6.5, I was 8, and his brother, who I will call Jacob, was 10. At that age, 2 years felt like a huge difference. Being friends with a 10-year-old made me feel important, almost chosen, like I had been allowed into a club meant for older kids. Jacob and I were the real friends, at least that was how I saw it then. But Adam was always there too, and in an innocent way, I truly loved him. Adam was special needs. I am not going to name what he had, partly because I do not clearly remember, and partly because it does not matter. What matters is that he was different from other kids. He had loud outbursts sometimes. He made sounds that did not follow the normal rules of speech. He could talk, but not always in the way people expected or wanted. He had vocal stems that came out when they came out. Everyone lost patience with him at times. That sentence makes me feel sick to write. Everyone includes me. Even though I loved being around him, even though I knew he could not always help it, I still got annoyed sometimes. I was 8. I did not understand. But I wish I had. I wish I could meet him now, as the person I am today. I would sit through anything he had to say or do. I would not roll my eyes. I would not get frustrated. I would not act like his needs were an interruption. I promise I would not. Jacob and I played Xbox together a lot. I have not touched an Xbox since. Because Jacob was older, our friendship felt like an honor. I always felt like I had to earn it and hold on to it. Looking back, I understand our closeness probably had less to do with me being special and more to do with convenience. My house was the closest to Jacob and Adam's parents' property. I was nearby, easy to invite over, easy to call when there was nothing better to do. Still, at the time, having 2 friends felt amazing. A lot of my visits to their house followed the same pattern. Jacob and I would play video games. Sometimes we would mess around with their dad's old typewriter, pretending we were writing stories or important documents. And sometimes Adam would come in and want to play hide and seek. Adam loved hide and seek. I do not know why that game, of all games, mattered so much to him, but it did. He was not great at most games that required strict rules. His words did not always come when he wanted them. His sounds came out on their own. But hide and seek was different. It was the closest he ever came to controlling his outbursts. He always wanted to hide. He always wanted me to seek. He could never stay completely quiet, not for long. But when he hid, he tried. He really tried. He would hold himself still, and then after a little while, one small vocal stem would slip out from wherever he was hiding, a little whistle, a soft tweet-tweet. She would come up to me and Jacob while we were playing Xbox, usually while we were doing one-on-one split screen on Rust. He would stand directly in front of the TV, blocking the screen, bumping his fists together and making his sounds. That meant he wanted us to stop and play with him. Jacob almost never wanted to. He had no patience for it. I feel sick typing that too. I wish I had pushed harder. I wish I had chosen Adam more. I wish I had told Jacob the game could wait and Adam mattered more than whatever stupid match we were playing. But I didn't. 1 month, Jacob and Adam were grounded. At least, that was what I was told. They had supposedly been getting into trouble a lot, and because of that, they were not allowed to have friends over. I remember being disappointed, but not devastated. Kids get grounded. Friends disappear for a week and then come back. I assumed that was all it was. Then Adam went missing. I wish I could tell you how I was told. I wish I remembered who sat me down. what words they used and how they explained something so confusing and terrifying to a child. But I do not. That part is gone. Maybe my mind removed it because it could not make sense of it. Maybe the details were never clear to begin with. All I remember is the new reality. Adam was missing. For the next week, my young mind learned pieces of information that never fit together properly. It also formed questions that I still do not have answers to. The first thing I remember learning after the news was that Adam had gone missing while playing hide-and-seek with Jacob. At the time, I think I made a choice without realizing it. I refused to fully think about that detail. I did not let myself open it. I was just sad, confused, waiting for adults to fix everything because that is what adults were supposed to do. I still went into my garage and made little projects like I always did. I was always building something stupid at that age. Props, toys, inventions that did not work and served no real purpose. I would glue things together, tape bottles to backpacks, paint scraps of wood, and imagine I was making something important. That week, even with Adam missing, I followed the same routine. Maybe because children cling to routine when the world becomes too big. I believe it was a day or so after Adam disappeared when I heard it for the first time. I was in the garage, probably building something, when one of my stepsisters told me to shut the garage and get ready for bed. She said if I didn't, she would tell my dad when he got home, and I would get in trouble. At that age, the garage door button was a little too high for me to press easily. I remember stretching my arm up toward it. My body was facing the wall when I pushed the button. That was when I heard the sound. It sounded like plastic slamming against something, not the concrete floor. I knew what things sounded like when they hit that floor. I spent enough time dropping toys and tools in that garage to know this sound was too hard to be something soft, but too soft to be a heavy object hitting concrete. It was a strange, hollow impact, sharp but muffled. I jumped and turned around. The garage was full of shadows. It was a four-door garage with shelves everywhere, stacked with tools, boxes, old toys, paint cans, and random things my family never threw away. From my height, I could not see over or around most of it. Anything could have fallen somewhere out of sight. Then I heard a bird chirp. That scared the living hell out of me. I could not see a bird anywhere. I stood there frozen, looking around the shelves and rafters, trying to find where the sound had come from. Maybe it was one of my toys. Maybe something had slipped. Maybe a bird had flown in earlier and gotten trapped without anyone noticing. I did not stay to find out. I ran inside and went to bed. Later that week, I overheard something from my dad and stepmom. This is one detail I remember clearly because nobody told it to me directly. I heard it from another room while adults were talking, which somehow made it feel more real. Jacob and Adam's parents would not let the police search their house. Even as a child, that felt strange. My dad thought so too. He was not quiet about it. Their parents claimed there was no reason for police to search because they had already checked the house themselves. Meanwhile, half the town was out searching hills, fields, ditches, and wooded areas for Adam. Volunteers were everywhere. Search parties formed. Adults walked for hours calling his name. My stepmom, who always had a flair for drama, even fainted during one of the search parties and had to be helped by a firefighter. The point is, everyone was searching everywhere, except inside the house. The police were not allowed to search there. For the first couple of days, I was caught up in the confusion and excitement of it all. People coming and going, adults whispering, search parties, news spreading through town. But by the third day, fear finally caught up with me. I remember lying in bed crying when my dad came into my room. He asked what was wrong. Looking back, it feels like such a stupid question. He knew what was wrong. Everyone knew. But maybe he wanted to hear what I understood. Maybe he wanted to know how much of it had reached me. I tried to look at him, but my eyes were full of tears. Adam's not good at hide and seek, I said. I broke in the middle of the sentence and started sobbing. I think that was the moment I began to understand that Adam was not playing hide and seek. And maybe he never really had been. The next day, I was in the garage again. 2 of the 4 doors were open, so there was plenty of daylight. I was gluing 2-liter bottles to a backpack because I wanted to make a fake flamethrower. I remember feeling oddly calm. My face was dry. My hands were busy. For a little while, I almost forgot what kind of week it had been. Then, I heard it again. But this time, I knew what it was. It was not a bird. It was Adam's whistling vocal stem. The same tweet-tweet he made whenever we played hide and seek. The same sound he let out when he stood in front of the TV, bumping his fists together, asking me and Jacob to stop playing Xbox and play with him instead. Tweet-tweet. The sound came from somewhere in the garage. I froze. Then I ran inside. I was scared, but I was also tired of being alone with the fear. I went upstairs to my 2 older stepsisters and asked if they thought Adam and Jacob's parents might let me hang out with Jacob. I understand now how stupid that question was. How inappropriate. How awful it must have sounded. Adam was missing, and I was asking if I could play with his brother. But I was 8. I was scared. And I missed my friends. My stepsisters did not care about that. They immediately yelled at me. They asked if I was stupid, using a cruel word I will not repeat here. They told me I was the most selfish person they knew. The younger one smacked me across the face and told me to clean my room, or they would tell my dad when he got home and make him get the belt. I ran to my room crying. They yelled after me not to cry, not to say a word, or they would tell Dad. That night, I fell asleep quickly because crying wears a child out better than any bedtime routine. But I woke up in a panic. I felt like I had seen something. A shadow, maybe. A shape in the room. But the moment I sat up, the image disappeared from my mind, leaving only pure fear behind. My heart was racing, my body was full of too much energy to sleep. But what I needed was comfort. There was no one in that house who would give me any. Then I had a thought. At the time, it made sense. Maybe the bird in my garage was Adam. Maybe that tweet-tweet was not a bird at all. Maybe it was him calling to me. Maybe it was a hint, like when we played hide and seek and he could not stay completely quiet. Maybe he had been trying to get me to look for him and I had ignored him. After all, I did not remember him ever playing hide and seek with anyone but me. The garage door was not far from my room. Not really. But I was 8 years old, and at that age, I sometimes went through phases where I was too scared to leave my room at night. There were nights I would wet the bed because the thought of walking through the dark house was worse than the shame that came after. So going to the garage was not a small decision, but I convinced myself it might bring comfort. In my child's mind, there was a chance I would find Adam. I would be the hero. I would bring him back. Everything would be okay again. I put a sweater over my pajamas and walked quietly to the garage. The door shut behind me. I turned on the light. The garage looked different at night, even with the light on. The shelves cast long shadows. Tools hanging on the walls looked like crooked hands. Boxes became shapes I could not trust. The open spaces between the shelves seemed deeper than they should have been. I walked around quietly. "Adam?" I called. My voice sounded too small. Then I heard it. Tweet. This time, I did not hear a bird at all. I heard Adam. I heard the same sound he made when we played hide and seek. That little slip of noise that always gave him away. The sound made me feel for one impossible second like I was close to finding him. It came from between 2 shelves. I moved toward it. "Adam?" I whispered again. Tweet, tweet. I turned the corner, and instead of seeing Adam, I heard that crashing sound again. Plastic striking something hard. That same strange impact. Too loud to ignore, but not quite loud enough to be something hitting the concrete floor. It happened so suddenly that terror shot through my whole body. I ran for the garage door opener and hit the button because I wanted more light, more air, more space. The door began to rise with its loud mechanical groan. That was a mistake. My father slammed open the door from the house. He had a revolver in his hand. He screamed at me, asking what the hell I was doing. I was too scared to tell the truth. Too scared to say I thought Adam was hiding in the garage. Too scared to explain the bird sound, the crash, the voice that wasn't a voice. I don't know, I said. That made him furious. He told me to get his belt. Then he beat me with it. I remember the shame more than the pain. I remember crying so hard I could barely breathe. I remember my stepsisters listening and being satisfied by my screams. I remember thinking, over and over, I thought I could find Adam. Adam was found that week, but not by me. He was found buried under a plum tree in his own backyard. The details came slowly after that, filtered through adult conversations, whispers, news, and the things kids repeated without fully understanding. Apparently, Adam and Jacob had gotten into a fight over the Xbox. That never made sense to me. Adam did not care about the Xbox. Not like Jacob did. Not like I did. Adam cared about hide and seek. He cared about getting us to stop playing so we would look for him. But the story was that Jacob had used the Xbox to hit Adam in the head. He beat him to death with it. Then Adam was buried under the plum tree. The tree hid the smell from the search dogs for a while. Maybe that was dumb luck. Maybe someone older and smarter than Jacob knew what they were doing. I do not know. I will never know. Jacob served 8 years. He got out not long after my senior year of high school. I think about him often. I think about Adam more. I have never reached out to Jacob. I never will. For years, I told myself my memory of that week did not matter. Compared to what happened to Adam, what I experienced was nothing. A child heard sounds in a garage during a traumatic week. A scared 8-year-old imagined a bird or a friend or a ghost. It was not important next to a real child's death. That is what I kept telling myself. But my experience was real to me. The fear was real. The sound was real. The hope I felt when I thought I might find him was real. The guilt afterward was real too. And now, lately I have been feeling that same panic again. The kind I felt when I woke up in the dark and thought maybe Adam was calling from the garage. It comes at random times. I will be writing, or making coffee, or lying in bed. And suddenly I am 8 again. I am standing in a garage that smells like dust and oil and old cardboard. I am listening between the shelves. Sometimes I hear a bird outside, and my body locks up before my mind can remind it that I am safe. Sometimes I hear a plastic object fall in another room, and I have to sit down. Sometimes when I am very tired, I think I hear it again. Tweet, tweet. I do not know what I believe anymore. Maybe there was a bird trapped in my garage. Maybe grief and fear made my brain turn random noises into Adam's voice. Maybe Adam was never there at all, but a part of me, the part that is still 8 years old and still wants to be the hero, believes he was hiding one last time, and I did not find him. I am hoping this will be the last time I reflect on that week, the week I was 8, the week my friend went missing, the week I thought there was a bird trapped inside my garage, the week I learned that sometimes hide and seek ends, and the person you were looking for was never hiding from you at all.